because that was the mistake that should never have happened. That was the human being that should never have come face to face in the seat of power for whatever reason. He was the most inept human being, the most inept figure, the most inept person that ever took office in Nigeria. Hi people, how are you doing today? Welcome back to my channel. If you are new to this channel, thank you so much for being here. Do not fail to subscribe, and if you're already subscribed to this channel, you are the real MVP. How are we all doing today? So first of all, I'm in a very celebratory mood. Okay, for many of you who do not know, I had my birthday last week. It didn't go out as planned, but it still went well. Okay, so I'm here because, again, it was birthday prep and all that. So yeah, so the month of July, I'm a Cancer baby, if you did not know. So yeah, we are the weirdest bunch of the group, and I would not change it for the world. That said, why are we here today? Well, oh my God, I forgot my microphone. Okay, so yes, I hope you guys can hear what I said. Okay, so let me start again. Hello guys, how you all doing? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Chinyere of Gillette Style Glam. If it's your first time here with me, thank you so much for being here. And if you're already subscribed to this amazing channel, you're awesome, you're welcome. You are the real MVP. So today, okay, this is the month of July. We're in a celebratory mode. If you're not aware, I had my birthday last week, and so it was amazing. I thank God for life. I thank God for the years. I thank God for everything, both good and bad. I thank you for God for the lessons learned along the way. It can only be Him, and that every year that passes by, we grow, we learn, we unlearn, we evolve, and that is my biggest flex, right? And so, why are we here today? Well, like I said, I'm in celebratory mode. And because I'm in celebratory mode, many of you, must have heard that we lost our former president, Mohammed Buhari. Now, first of all, I want to say this very clearly. I am in a very, 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 very celebratory mode. So which means I have no sympathy to give. I am sorry. And I'm going to state the reasons why. Okay. I have absolutely no sympathy to give. Because there are so many things that underlie a lot of things that have happened in Nigeria. If you've heard me talk about it, even on TikTok, I've always classified our political class as criminals. The present ones we have are the worst of the bunch we've ever known in our lives. And we are in a situation where everyone is just falling in line, right? And so I don't have the bandwidth, right, for any form of, condolence messages, at all. And so where do I begin? So this is a man. And again, so it's quite unfortunate because I'm going to go into a little bit of a, maybe call it a soliloquy, if you are one of those who did literature. So I'm going to go into a bit of a soliloquy here. So please bear with me. While I, speak. So, President Mohammed Buhari, or former President Mohammed Buhari, died. Now, they told us he died on the 14th of July. No, he did not die on the 14th of July, and that's where I'm going to end it. He died prior. And I'm not talking about the 2000. I don't have facts on the 2017 thing I don't have facts on that, but I know it wasn't on the 14th that he died. That said, we are talking about a man, okay? And I've listened to the Nigerian journalistic space, which is an apology for journalism, I must say. except Arise News, who are the only credible journalists, I would say, that we have in Nigeria. But everyone was busy speaking in mode of respect, and I get it. After all, it is said that we do not speak ill of the dead. I understand all of that. But like I said, unfortunately, I don't have the bandwidth for that level of compassion. And I don't have the bandwidth for that level of compassion because Muhammad Buhari died without compassion. He led Nigeria without any form of compassion for anybody, except those who he felt were important to him. So I don't have the bandwidth. So I want to go, I just want to start from when his tenure began. Now, this is somebody who came out campaigning on a lot of things. Now, prior to this is a man who had been given a couple of projects in Nigeria to handle, and it seemed like he was going to be able to do the job. And then he came out, he started, and Nigerians were quite very worried about his stance when it came to talking about Nigeria, turning Nigeria into an Islamic state, and everyone just pulled back on the stick, right? And then out of the blues, out of nowhere, he joined another party, and then the whole language changed. Now, this man came in at a time when Nigerians were pretty vulnerable, following the death of, following the bomb attacks that were happening in Boko Haram. We were raw, we were vulnerable. And at that time, the previous president, Goodluck Jonathan, seemed to be helpless. I also have my grudge with that one. He wasn't a bad leader, but he was a bad leader. He wasn't a bad president, but he was not a good president either. And why I say he wasn't a good president was because I don't like to use the word coward, but that was what he portrayed. But then one could say a lot of things because we've now begun to hear and understand a lot of things and factors, underlying factors that, put him in that position. And I will never forget, I kept on saying, but I thought this man is the commander-in-chief, right? So Nigerians were vulnerable at the time when, Boko Haram hit, and it had never been seen before. And so everyone believed, myself included, and said, okay, maybe because Jonathan does not have a military background, he does not know what to do. Let us do it this way. Let us, allow someone who's got a military background to handle things on the front of, the Boko Haram thing that was going on, in Nigeria. Little did we know that, the guy was enmeshed in the whole thing. And, that began one of the biggest nightmares Nigerians have lived and are living till today. And so there was massive support for him. That said, he came in and we okay, everyone was like, and this at the time he was in his 70s. And, there was this general consensus as that was saying, give him time. He's just coming in, allow him to, settle in and stuff like that. At the same time, we're also hearing reports that the person who was there as president was not the real person. And we're like, is this happening? How is this going on? How are we being hoodwinked this way? But that was what we heard. But everyone, we kept quiet. Mind you, this was a man who had been elected into office. And why it seemed plausible was he was elected into office and he spent 9 months out of the first year of his tenure in the UK. And we were like, okay, what is going on? We have a president, but the president was in the UK. And we now start hearing things about him being sick and how he was receiving treatment. Nothing. No message, nothing. There was nothing. Normally, in a democratic government, if the president is incapacitated, he gets to sign over, power of attorney to the vice president. It was only the vice president was doing, and he was doing marvelously well. And so he got wind of the fact that, oh, Nigerians were getting impatient and we're supposed to go, and there was going to be, a protest. And then, boom, the protest was cancelled. It was as though there were threats that were being thrown here and there, and the protest was cancelled. And then 1 week later or two, he comes back to Nigeria. And we're like, okay, the president is back. Thinking that we were talking or thinking about a human being. This is a man who I would be asking, those who are busy with telling him to rest in peace, he would never. I'm not sure it's going to bother. I don't even care about that. And this was someone that came in and threw the nation into total chaos. Mohammed Buhari made Nigerians to buy naira in naira. We were doing bureau de change in our country with our currency. He is the one that introduced that. It was the same man who ensured that fuel subsidy that he had no clue about and what it was going to be about, ensured that the price of fuel became astronomical for every Nigerian. He threw Nigerians into poverty. At the time where we were all expecting something concrete to happen, what we were getting were threats. The same man banned Twitter for a country who, is a democracy, right? And said because he tweeted something that was inappropriate, totally inappropriate. I am no longer on that app. I'm done with it. I'm not even interested anymore. So I'm not even going to look for that tweet. And he posted something. If I find it flying around on social media, I'll put it here. But I'm not, because it was very inappropriate. And I'm not even sure if YouTube is going to allow it. And so they reported the account. And because they reported the account, he now banned Twitter. So we were off of Twitter for about a week. Jack Dorsey, God bless you, who happened to be aware at the time, was riding for Nigerians at the time. He was riding all the way for us, all the way. I would never forget. Shortly after, the Twitter ban was lifted with threats again. After a while, he left Twitter, and I think he gave the account to somebody. And so he would type whatever happened. Nigeria went through a brutal period. And this is to say, and I'm coming back again to his tenure in the previous dispensation in the 80s. Nigeria went through a brutal period with this man because we were being unalived by policemen. We were going through exploitation, you name it, by the police. And this was something that Goodluck Jonathan had tried to tackle, but to no avail, because again, one of the ways to actually get a nation into oblivion and destroy it is to go through the executive. Once the executive is corrupt, that's it. And so that was where we were. And so a nationwide protest happened. God, I protested. I will show you my picture. I live in France, but I protested. I will bring a picture and show you here. And SARS, Buhari must go. And that was all that triggered him. At the time that triggered him, at Lekki, where Nigerians were, in the middle or in the night, crying for their voices to be heard in their own country, waving their nation's flag. President Muhammad Buhari ordered the unaliving of Nigerians. There is video evidence till date. People have fled Nigeria on asylum because of what happened at SARS. They cannot come home. Okay? People were unalived. Parents, there are people who are still going through the trauma of what happened to them at Lekki Tollgate. CNN carried the news. But of course, as always, they have to stay, it's none of their business as they claim. Am I surprised? Am I surprised? No. Am I surprised that forensics reports about the ammunition used were from Syria? No. I mean, there's Boko Haram behind us, isn't there? I'm not surprised. That was the biggest revelation to me. I'm like, okay, the ammunition that was used on Nigerians were brought in from Syria. Okay. And so he did it, and he put out a nationwide broadcast, which he was not want to do. He did not want to do it. He was practically cajoled and pushed. That nationwide broadcast was not live. It was pre-recorded. And in that nationwide broadcast, all we heard were threats, and more threats. This man stifled free speech and created a regime of autocracy, a regime of fear. He created a regime of dictatorship, because that is all he knows. And it was all threats. Lives were lost. Parents were crying for their children. In the same vein, Nigeria held what was supposed to be the freest and fairest election ever, with Peter Obi as the candidate everybody wanted there. It was a no-brainer. President Muhammad Buhari stayed there and saw how thugs, it is on paper, it is on video. I have video evidence of all those things, but I cannot post them on YouTube. President Muhammad Buhari folded his arms with toothpick in his mouth, and he was picking his teeth, and thugs were hacking people down at polling stations. Thugs were attacking people and threatening people and stopping people from voting. And he, as the president of the nation, did nothing. Like I said, he folded his arms and was picking his teeth. In the same vein, in the build-up to the elections, President Muhammad Buhari decided on the whim that we were going to change the Nigerian currency. It absolutely made a lot of sense from the perspective we were looking at it from, because he gave us the impression that he was trying to tackle corruption. We fell for every trick in the book, hook, line, and sinker, because that was not the plan. In fact, the plan was that the Naira notes were already being disbursed and paid off to the people that mattered, who were supposed to be taking care of the elections, the body that was supposed to be taking care of the elections. And so, while Nigerians were hungry, they could not withdraw money from the banks. People could not pay hospital bills, and people were unaliving like it was flies falling from the sky. And he sat in Aso Rock with the toothpick, and he was picking his teeth. At that time, there was no compassion, and he did not carry out any address in sympathy to the people who passed due to his negligence and ineptitude, because he was the most inept human being, the most inept figure, the most inept person that ever took office in Nigeria. He did not give out any word. He did not go to visit the families. I had a bone to pick with the vice president at the time, Vice President Yemi Oshobanjo. I called him out so many times on Twitter, but I actually pulled back at a point, and I asked myself, maybe this man is playing the devil's advocate. Maybe he is the balm that is supposed to soothe all that is going on, because it was only him who went from door to door, house to house, and to see the people who were hurt. Now, if we go back to his first dispensation as military ruler in Nigeria, a lot of people have had the impression for the longest time that President Muhammad Buhari was the person and the strong arm behind war against indiscipline. Why? And I remember that period because I was, 5, 6 at the time? Can't remember. But I do remember because I started reading newspapers very early. My father was the brain behind that. I began to read very, very quickly as a child. By the time I was 8 years old, I was reading at the church It was my father's doing, each and every one of us. And so I will never forget that dispensation. And a lot of people got the impression or had the impression that President Muhammad Buhari was the brain behind all the forms of discipline that was happening in Nigeria. False. It was not him. I will give kudos to General Diagbon. General Diagbon, I pray that you find heaven with God. I am praying for your soul because you are a good man. You are a general that is a general. You were a man, you were a leader. And so I pray to God every day for you because you deserve, as a good leader, you deserve to be where leaders are supposed to be. Every reform, every form of governance that happened in Nigeria in 1986 was handled and carried out by General Idiagbon himself. May his soul continue to rest in peace. And so we come back here and then we realize that he had always just had a covering of people who decided, okay, they will close out, they will close up his ineptitude. Nobody has to know. And then, making it easy for criminals, okay, to access the seat of power. This was a man that touted fight against corruption, every language he spoke. And the masterpiece in the whole game was how, again, just like what we're seeing here, how the internet and how the, flooding of search engines, the PR game of ensuring that we did not get the real story, the real gist about who Mohammed Buhari was. It was a whitewash, and we all fell for it. My husband, I'll never forget, said something at the time, and he was so bold to say it, and I wasn't listening, but my husband was onto something. My husband said, President Muhammad Buhari was the president when I was a child. I am now in my 50s and President Muhammad Buhari is coming back again as a president. My husband said, no. I didn't understand it, but it made a lot of sense. At the time when things began to happen, it made a lot of sense because that was the mistake that should never have happened. That was the human being that should never have come face to face in the seat of power for whatever reason. You may be hearing people who are extolling him about, the day of mourning and all whatnot. Well, those are the cronies. Those are the people that have been able, that again, it is all about the fight, about the seat of power. They are all there. Will I go further to say as well that in the wake of all of this, this was a man who, I would say, and boldly too, that he had absolutely no form of courage. He had absolutely none. And he had no principles. He didn't have anything. He was just an empty numbskull. I keep bold to say it because, again, nothing. President Muhammad Buhari died in the London clinic. But a president who served 8 years in power could not carry out reforms on the health sector. I am not surprised that he could not carry out reforms on the education sector because, again, ineptitude. He failed his exams. How are we there? How are we here? I want to juxtapose this with what could have happened in France some years back, or last year rather. One of the candidates who were vying for presidency did not have his back. Yes, and so in the course of the ampleur of the extreme right, well, we found out that this guy did not have back. And back is like taking your SSCEs or your SATs and whatever. And we're like, what? And then every parent in France, myself included, began to question, how do I tell my child that education is important if somebody as inept as this wants to take over as president and does not have the simple SATs that is required. He does not have his simple SATs. He did not pass any. Whew, tragedy averted. Why I'm saying this is because look at where we are today in Nigeria. Nigeria is run by criminals. Criminals who deal in substance abuse. Criminals who deal in substances that should not be sold anywhere. That is the country that is being run. You see, Nigeria is a reflection today of its leaders. Leaders who deal in cartels. That is the reflection of the people that are running Nigeria. And so when you see Nigeria and you see the state of Nigeria, we are on the wrong side of history. Despite the fact that we have people who are trying so hard to ensure that we have at least a reputation. Unfortunately, there is no reputation because, again, the president is, like I was saying. So, I do not have any compassion to spare. I do not have anything to give. If you come here and you talk about respect the dead or blah, 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 I am not in that demographic anymore. For me, that ship has sailed, and I am sorry. I want to use this opportunity also to give and send out my heartfelt condolence to the Oba of Ijebu-Ode who passed on. If you follow me on TikTok, you'll be aware that I did talk about Ojude Oba. And so I want to give my heartfelt condolence to the family of Oba Sikiru Kayode Adetona, who reigned in Ijebu-Ode as Ijebu monarch for 65 years. He was a man who was revered and respected, and the creation of Ojude Oba has his name on it. And so I want to send my heartfelt condolence to the family. He died on the same day as Mohammed Buhari. That said, like I said, I don't have 2 F's to give. He was a man who did not give that. And so it's unfortunate and it's difficult to give the same. On the whole of social media, you cannot find a kind word about him, and nobody's interested. As I speak to you, there is celebration in his home state over his passing. I bid you all farewell and have a beautiful, beautiful day. Do not fail to like, share, comment, and subscribe to this video. Bye.